Her works have been done by the Public Theater, the Goodman, Mark Tapper Forum, Berkeley Rep, Rattlestick, Playwrights Theater, to name a few. She is a recipient of the New York Foundation for the Arts Grant, the Helen Mural Award for Emerging Playwrights, a Guggenheim, and the 2005 Penn Laura Peels Foundation Award for a playwright in mid-career, a Lucille Lortel Foundation Playwrights Fellowship, and an Obie Award. In 2019, she will perform Until the Flood at the Portland Center Stage and the Galway Arts Festival. Ngozi Anyanwu wrote Good Grief.
Ngozi Anyanwu.
I'm sorry, I was trying, I'm sorry. Wrote Good Grief, which was produced by Center Theater Group in LA and the Vineyard Theater in New York. She wrote The Homecoming Queen, which had a sold-out run at the Atlantic Theater.
And I'm going to this background from Linda. So Linda Armstrong has been a theater critic for the New York Amsterdam News for 33 years. Through the years, she has covered Broadway, off-Broadway, off-Broadway, and a great deal of Black theater companies. She is on the board of directors for Dalcoe and on its nominating committee. Dalcoe recognizes excellence in Black theater. In 2015, Dalcoe gave her a Lifetime Achievement Award. She has been a member of the Outer Critics Circle, the American Theater Critics Association, and is a member of Drama Desk. Ms. Armstrong has been on the board of directors of Drama Desk and served as its secretary. Through the years, Ms. Armstrong's reviews have been in the Playbill Online, Our Time Press, in which for 10 years she had a theater column, On the Aisle. Ms. Armstrong has a feature writer for 1 year for Show Business Weekly newspaper, and during that time, did countless interviews with industry insiders, playwrights, directors, producers, and helped readers to see this industry from their perspective. Ms. Armstrong did a featured stories for Headline Magazine, a theater publication of Radio City. She has written for Theater Week magazine. She also does feature stories for the Network Journal magazine. She writes theater pieces for the Harlem News Group paper, Harlem News, Brooklyn News, Queens News, and Bronx News, including a special annual Blacks on Broadway issue. Ms. Armstrong is theater editor for New World magazine, an online global publication. Through the years, Ms. Armstrong has interviewed numerous celebrities, playwrights, directors, and producers. She has always enjoyed covering theater, especially making sure to cover as much Black theater as she can. An archive of all of her reviews for the New York Amsterdam News can be found in the Lincoln Center Performing Arts Library. Ms. Armstrong participated in the second annual Broadwaycon as part of Everyone's a Critic panel in 2017. Ms. Armstrong created and moderated a panel at Broadwaycon in 2018 on female theater critics.
Yeah, that's just So let me start off. This question is for everybody. How do you decide what you're going to write about and what inspires you?
For now, I guess my stuff is personal, and so I think I sort of write based on what I'm struggling with. And what I'm thinking most deeply about Good Grief was sort of about my best friend who passed when I was like 20. And I started writing on the anniversary of his passing, and it started out as a poem just to him. And then eventually it just kept writing itself. And became a thing, you know? And then Homecoming Queen was something when I was struggling with about my parents' mortality and thinking about what is it to be first generation and be separated from my parents' culture and know that I'm going to have to one day bury my father. And so making up a story based on that. And so a lot of stuff is based on the things that are going on currently in my life, but also the things that I'm struggling with and thinking about and wrestling with. And I think for now I'm using the plays as a tool to like figure out an option of like how to move forward. And those things I'm struggling with.
Yeah. Also, I usually tend to write big ideas that's grappling with the African American community, that's affecting me, or things that I've been pondering on. And it usually comes from imagery and sound. I'm an actress as well, and like a lot of times my way into characters or into my work comes from something I hear, something I see. with my play A Small Oak Tree Runs Red, which is based off of a lynching that took place in Valdosta, Georgia. The first thing I heard was the sound of a baby's cries. So from that sound, I usually, for some reason, the world opens up to me that way. And another play that I recently wrote, An Ancient Tale of Debauchery, which is my ode to Black women. It started with just with wit, and my plays tend to take place in the place between heaven and hell, a holding space, which is my idea that we as America is stuck because there hasn't been any grappling with the crimes done to the Black body in America. So I've curated 3 pieces of my idea of what that holding space is, either physically or mentally, and that's usually where I start. The third play in the triage is dealing with my ode to Black boys and this Peter Pan place that they can go in order to preserve their Black boy magic. And in the play, you meet a man who, his physical holding space is this room, which he's confined himself to in order to not deal with the world. So that's usually, right now, that's where my inspiration.
I want to see that play.
It's actually, for some reason, turning into a musical.
Okay.
Mine, it's funny, mine, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Mine is whatever I'm going through, combination between the two. Sound, whatever songs I hear make me think of characters, whatever I'm reading at the time. I could be thinking about anything. It could definitely be personal, but it also may be global. It may be, because I listen to all kinds of music, so it's like maybe, I might be listening to Nina Simone, I might be listening to Nina Hagen, yeah, or Velvet Underground, whatever I'm listening to at the time, so it's a lot of, I don't like ideas, yeah, I lack time. So that's what I lack. So, but I'm stimulated by whatever I'm reading at the time, or it's I literally can think of a character after listening to a song or hearing a note within the song. It's a shock to me. That's the thing that maybe somebody would say that it was, but I don't like that. I really like the time. So it's a combination between both. Actually, what they're saying.
All right, thank you. So my next question is for Lekethia. I had the pleasure of experiencing Small Oak Tree Runs Red at the Broadway Theater. What about the story gripped your soul to the point of creating it?
Yeah, when the story first came to me, at the time I was a new mother, and I wrote the play. It was in a whole different type of inception. It was sort of linear, it had all the characters, but what gripped me about the story was Mary Turner, this woman who was lynched when she was 8 months pregnant for speaking out against the lynching of her husband, and the way in which her child, after coming into this world, was also brutally killed by the foot of the mob. And what caught me was that this story was so widely recorded. It was in so many newspaper articles. It was in the work of a mob with NAACP, and the fact that I had never heard of this story. In regards to the Small Oak Tree, I definitely believe it was something ancestral. I believe Mary found me for the way in which I tapped into the story, and when I went back to rewrite it after I saw those sounds, it became kind of like a surge. I literally wrote the first draft of the play in a matter of less than 2 weeks, and I believe she was speaking to me. I believe in ancestry. I believe in energy, and also believe for the way in which the Black body has been treated on this land, that our ancestors, their spirits are moving, and there isn't a complete rest. And so I tend to tap into that energy some type of way. So that's how a Small Oak Tree came to me, being a young mother. And also, outside the fact of the goriness in which they were killed, her and her husband had an immense love story. Right? This young woman at the age of, had to be about 18 at the time, to have the courage in 1918 to step into a sheriff's office and demand that justice be done for the murder against her husband, had to know the consequences of what it was to be a Black woman at that time and to speak out as such. So it was a love story. And so I wanted to tap into that. And how it came once I went back, and we see these 3 central characters: Mary Hayes Turner, her husband, and a young man named Sidney Johnson, who was the actual person who went out and killed the landowner who was very abusive at the time and caused this Holocaust lynching to take place. And these three characters, Mary doesn't know that she's dead, and they're basically trying to force her to remember. So we go on a journey of her remembrance in order for them to move on from this holy space between heaven and hell, right? And so the place is alive, and I'm very much, I love what Eugene unveiled the idea of the essence of the environment being another character. Mm-hmm. The environment in itself is a character. It does everything and anything, the elements in order to stop the memories from going forward. So it's very much physical, it's very much of the director Harry Lennox, we coined it a spiritual gothic, very dark, immense spirituality. I tend to tap into darkness in order to reveal the light. And that's really where the story came. And with the production at the Billie Holiday, it was I call it a full circle. It was on the 100th year anniversary of Mary Turner's death in 1918, in which I had my first New York premiere, 2008. So yeah, I think Mary found me. And I just allowed myself to do that.
Well, I'm really glad she found me, because when I saw that piece, it so moved me. I just was like, wow. It was beautiful. It was passionate. I felt their pain. Everybody in the audience, we were all angry when the murders were happening, and the way that people did it, and they just didn't care, and people were bragging about it. We were just like, wow, how can people be so hard? It was just, wow. Now, what were you trying to do with this piece, and what do you try to do in general with your plays? What void are you trying to fill? I mean, you're saying that the ancestors talk to you, so are you trying to fill a void of saying that, you want to be the person that lets this generation know what the ancestors are feeling? What are you trying to do?
I mean, just a little background with me. Like I said, I'm an actress first. My journey as a playwright has been, within the last 3 years. So with a small oak tree, I went on a journey of learning how to be a playwright. Like now I'm a playwright. Like, I know what to do. Like I learned on the job. I'd never even workshopped it. We produced it in Chicago, right, back to back, and then New York back to back. So I'm on that journey of learning what it is. But I feel I'm very clear as to what comes to me naturally. And like I said, it tends to be very big ideas of the African American community, and I tend to put it in an intimate space with characters that's grappling with these ideas. So with a small oak tree, when I first went to rewrite it, I went to it to healing of myself, right? At the time, I was dealing with Trayvon Martin's and all this about black men being killed and on the streets, and then looking at my own child and the idea of what can we do? Where is there safety? And then I had this woman who was a mother who everything she did was to try to protect her husband, and her child, and it was still just thrived out because of hate. So I went to writing as a way of healing for myself, solace. Sometimes as black writers, we tend to use our work as our own catharsis, our own way of healing. And what I wanted a small oak tree to do was to do the same for anyone as well in the audience, right? To be a catharsis, a way of healing, a way of just releasing that rage that we tend to walk in. So I allow myself to be very unapologetic in my approach to the work, and very unapologetic in the way in which my characters deliver their rage. And very much, I left with knowing that I, as a woman, a young woman, could so easily tap into what a woman was feeling 100 years ago, so easily. So it told me how much change has it actually been in America. I could actually feel, I would walk around with the same rage, the same fear of being a mother. And I could so easily relate to this woman. So it wasn't me, I didn't have to do a lot of historical research. I had the articles. But at the end of the day, I allowed the characters to say what I was feeling in the spectrum of this world. And that was beautiful, and yet it was frightening. Right?
Thank you so much. Dael, you're playing Yellow Man, and I know that you've written a lot of plays since then.
Right.
But unfortunately, Yellow Man is the only one that I've had a chance to see.
A lot of people. It's not a lot.
Yeah. Because I remember when I called Dael, and I said to her about doing the panel, and I said, I saw Yellow Man, and she said, that was a long time ago. And I said, really? And she was like,
I hope that
no, you didn't. But I was like, wow, I'm so sorry. Okay, but this is what I saw. And Yellow Man, it just touched me so much because it deals with the issues in the Black community with our different shadings. And I personally went through a lot growing up as a light-skinned Black with green eyes. It was not easy. You know, it wasn't white people that gave me any problems. They loved me. It was my own Black people that really made my life very uncomfortable. So when I saw Yellow Man at Billie Holiday Theater, I said, oh my God, you know. I mean, the only thing I needed that they didn't do at Billie Holiday, I needed to talk back. Because when we went into that bathroom at intermission, everybody was like, oh girl, me too, you know what happened. And I was like, oh my God, you too? And your grandmother didn't like you either? It's like, wow, really? You know, because I went through stuff with my dad's family, and it was all kinds of stuff. And so when I saw that play, it spoke so much to my heart. I was literally sitting in the theater in tears, you know, and I cried throughout the entire thing because it was like, oh my God. I mean, what these characters go through, I didn't go through that because that was like the total extreme. I've never seen such self-hatred ever, but it was like, it was such an experience. It touched me so much. And what did you want people to experience when they walked away from Yellow Man?
You know, I write for people. I don't write for, I write to you.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes any sense. What I wanted to look at, certainly like with the internal racism, but I also wanted to look at the legacy of the origin of that. I also wanted to look at the sins of the father, the sins of the mother. I want to look at generational abuse.
Oh, I'm sorry, I put that.
And I think sometimes the fourth commandment is can be a ransom commandment, because there are people who should not have children. You know, I mean, I think also we should add one. We should also honor our children as well. So I wanted to look at that legacy. That story came about. You know, I'm going to be 60 this year, and I used to go down to. I used to go down to the South. My mother's from South Carolina, and I would go down. And there was this family that would, you know, by the time the guys who like grew up in the '60s, who were like raised and who like grew up in the 1940s to like 1950, 51, there was a family that specifically would keep the color line going, and there was mental and physical problems with their family that kept it going. But I want to loosely write about them and how they were also tortured by also being fair-skinned, because down there I was so aware of dark and light. Their specific, and again also we look at the legacy of racism, but also again looking at the beyond that, because certainly that is one of the roots, but where does self-hatred come from? And it's interesting how the way this play has extended itself into other areas, in other groups of people. For instance, within the white community, you have to wear blondes versus brunettes. Eastern Jews, say, you know, versing Northern Jews, like I know, like, for instance, there's some, the German Jews are considered, and again, please, if I speak out of turn, you know, please let me know. So you have Russian Jews versus German Jews. So the German Jews, as a friend of mine who's Jewish said, they're considered the wasps of the Jews. You know, the split between, you know, you know, looking at race and all of that, you know, say within the Asian community, and looking at it within the Latino community, you know, the rift between Cubans, Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, right? You know, so again, I wanted to look at that, but also again look at, like I said, how we don't honor children, and again, and generational abuse. So it's definitely about color, but it's also about other things. Yeah.
So, besides Yellow Man, you've written so many other things. What are the audiences that you're writing to, since you write and cover more than the Black experience? What are the other audiences that you're writing to, since you cover more than the Black experience? You do more.
I mean, I'm getting ready to go. There's a lot of spiritual places for me. Ireland is one of them. Because especially when you, and ironically enough, Eugene O'Neill had never been to Ireland. Yeah, he'd never been. He didn't want to go. If you know about James O'Neill's father, he didn't want to go. But there are a lot of spiritual places. India is a place that I want to go. It's like, so the response to me is, I'm going to use a corny term. Of course, it's a given that I am black and a given that I am female, but also the Scottish poet talks about people being citizens of the world. And so for me, maybe I'm writing about an aspect of the black experience. Maybe I'm writing about, I don't know, whatever. I just closed a play called Lady in Denmark, where it was written in Danish about Billie Holiday's first tour of Europe. It closed at the Goodman. And how the way one meeting with Billie Holiday affected this Danish woman, and Billie Holiday actually referenced this woman in Lady Sings the Blues. And I got a chance to meet the woman, and you know, it's just kind of interesting. So again, certainly it's a given that we're black and female up here writing, and some of us are writing directly more so, but it also becomes a universal experience. So my writing, as it were, is like people are responsive to it, you know. I also get where certain people get mad at me for writing outside of the race. I've also experienced that as well. Because we're in a funny time right now, where words cannot be used. Like this mess that happened with Viggo Mortensen is ridiculous. You know what happened with Viggo Mortensen, right? No. Okay, very briefly, yeah. Viggo Mortensen, you know, is talking about the film and he said, you know, the word nigger is a horrible word, and you know, we need to look at what happened racially then, we need to look at what happened racially now. Because he didn't say the N-word, he was told that he was bigoted, which is not true. Because I live on the Lower East Side, and I remember this man being down there and being parts of, you know, things for people of color. With New York Poets Cafe and other communities as well. And he also has mixed race people within his family, so it's not this. We have, when we talk about words like inclusion, and I have mixed feelings about that word either, because there's something kind of patronizing about it in a weird way. We also have to be prepared racially, sexually, whatever it is, to be open as well and realize that there are certain people who are going to say dumb things because there are dumb people on the planet. But we also have to realize that we also have to open ourselves and not be too quote unquote precious with what we've been through. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so now,
I bet you I answered the next question too.
no. No, actually, I'm about to go to Ngozi. Did I say it right? Ngozi. What can I say it right?
Ngozi, okay, it's like guzzle. Ngozi.
Okay.
Ngozi.
With good grief, you handle a very difficult topic. Your reaction to losing someone who dies unexpectedly that you really care about. How did you come up with the stages of grief?
Well, I didn't come up with this. Nice. You know, it was interesting. I wrote it like 10 years after my friend had passed, and I was also writing at the same time as a heartbreak, which I also feel like is one other form of grief, you know, to go through. So I'm sort of like in the thick of it, and really try to write it as honestly as possible about. It's interesting, when I wrote it, I really was writing about like how funny all the things were that I was going through. I was going through my first best friend loss. I'm a first generation, and my parents are very Nigerian, and they just were not very helpful at all. So a lot of it, you know, was like me crying and them like going, "What are you? What is this?" And so I wrote with a lot of that, you know, and I didn't really think of it in terms of like the 5 stages, right? The bargaining, the acceptance, the anger. I just kind of tried to, as honestly, depict the feeling of what I was going through. Like the play's not a reenactment, but the sort of the feeling of what I was going through, and hope that that felt honest. So, but I never really thought of like, oh, this has to be the scene where there's anger, this has to be the scene where there's denial, this has to be the scene where there's bargaining, or I just didn't think of it in terms of that. We didn't, like, not, when it was produced at the Center Theater Group, they actually had brought in, the dramaturg was wonderful, and brought in this man who was actually one of the architects of writing the 5 stages of grief, but I'd already written the play by then. So it was kind of like, did I do it? And what's interesting is like, you know, thoughts in psychology and things like that are always evolving. And so, but he was sort of someone who was like, who